because pressure's growing on Boris Johnson on another matter and his Finance Minister Rishi Sunak to levy a one-off windfall tax on offshore oil and gas operators to help householders and businesses with soaring energy prices. This comes after the boss of the oil giant BP said high commodity prices had turned his company into a cash machine. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Naweed Jabarkal, who's following the story for us. Naweed, the government under growing pressure on soaring energy bills. Tell us more.
Yeah, we've just been hearing from Andrew about the political pressure facing the Prime Minister. And at the end of the day, there may be a lot of people in the country who don't feel they're impacted by some of those stories, whereas the cost of energy is something that's going to hit households all up and down the country. It was the Liberal Democrats, one of the opposition parties, who first suggested the idea of a windfall tax, what's been known as a Robin Hood tax, taking from big companies and helping offset some of the costs for poorer households around the UK. The other major opposition party here in England, Labour, they have taken that idea and formalised it into a proposal over the weekend. The Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has put out this plan, which she says would raise about $1.6 billion from these companies in tax. And what she says that will translate to is about $270 in savings for every household on average. She goes further and says for poorer, lower income households and pensioners, there'll be an extra $800 of support. Now, politically, that's going to be very, very useful for the Labour Party. So there is the cynics who look at this, and the critics will say that there is an element of politics in here. But of course, there is a lot of pressure facing many British households at the moment because of the cost of living. One factor is the cost of energy, the soaring energy bills all up and down the UK and indeed across other parts of Europe, particularly when it comes to gas, which we'll touch upon in a second. But here in the UK, inflation is also near a 10-year high at more than 5%. It's set to get worse in the coming months, many analysts say, so that's another challenge for the Prime Minister. But what's really exacerbating all of this, in the United Kingdom at least, Boris Johnson can't control the price of global commodities, but what he can do is look at the levers that he does have, and what's really hurting businesses in the UK when it comes to the energy sector is what's known as the energy price cap. No matter what the wholesale price of energy is, when it comes to gas, for example, they're limited in how much they can charge their customers, and that's forced more than 25 companies since August to go bust because of the pressures they're facing with how much the cost of the goods have spiraled. And they certainly have. You'll remember the COVID-19 pandemic. You mentioned the comments from the chief of BP saying they're now a cash machine. At one time, a couple of years ago, crude oil was in negative territory. It actually cost companies to store the good or pump the good. Now, today, Brent crude up over $81, about $82 it was earlier this afternoon. So there's some money to be made, and what this proposal is saying is the profits and the cash flow that's coming through for these companies should be distributed to try and offset some of the costs for ordinary households.
Naweed, I'm guessing, facing the prospects of a windfall tax, the UK energy sector isn't exactly leaping for joy.
No, well, Oil and Gas UK, which represents the industry, it's the main body here, it says that it's already going to pay about $4.5 billion to the Chancellor, to the Exchequer, because of increased taxes, because the price of oil and gas is going high. It means they're going to pay more tax. It then added that the corporation tax rate for oil and gas companies in the UK is about 40%, which is far, far higher than what the 19%, 20% many other companies are paying. But it does seem that the government is rejecting these calls. It says that what it's going to do is actually hurt a lot of these companies off the coast of the UK, which are actually strategically very important in the UK. If you look at what the independent analysts are saying, they're saying that cash flow for North Sea oil and gas producers this year is going to reap about $20 billion in rewards. So there is an argument that there will be big paydays at these companies. But just lastly, the whole idea of a windfall tax, there's a lot of concern around that. Some people think it doesn't work because it could reduce investment, it could make competition much, much harder in the sector, and ultimately that could mean higher prices in the end for consumers. So there's a big question about whether a windfall tax would even work in the first place.